This is the Henry's Child Podcast. Am I crazy? Or am I just raving?
Today's episode of the Am I Crazy or Am I Just Raving podcast is with my friend Keith Brown. Keith has been kind of on my bucket list, on my radar for a long time. And it wasn't until we sort of got to talking that I realized how deeply influential his bands were, not only on Henry's Child, but really on the Pacific Northwest scene as a whole. It really is amazing. Keith is a founding member of 2 Minutes 8, which was also Thresher, which was also TV616. And we get into sort of some of the nuances and fine-tune some of the iterations in this podcast. But I forgot really how close we were. I mean, we played hundreds of shows with these guys, and we always got along, and we always had a lot of fun. But now that I'm a little older, I truly appreciate the presence and the sacredness of Thresher and the art that they created and how deeply and profoundly they impacted all of us. So it's really a very, very fun and great interview, which we'll get to in just a sec. But first, I have a couple items of housekeeping that I wanted to bring up. So first and foremost, we have a video premiere party that is going to be happening on September 28th, and that is a Saturday. It's going to be happening in Eugene at a theater called the Broadway Metro. And this Friday, on Friday the 13th, we are going to release the sort of official event on Facebook. And this theater is going to premiere our video, The Stars in Your Eyes, which is on the record I Have Become. And it's the first video we've ever really done. Hot Carl Productions, Carl Winery, did it with us, and it's been a couple months in the making. And it's a very, very cool video as far as music videos go. So the challenge specifically for us is that there are only 60 seats that this can hold. And we're also going to be doing it with our friends Toxic Zombie as well. So they're going to have a video out too. So what we'd like to do is we would like to set up different times that the video is going to premiere. So there's going to be an 8:30 showing, and there's going to be a 9:15 showing. And in between there, we have some really cool old video that we found that we're going to be showing, and it's really just a celebration. It's a chance to come out and just hang out with the band, have a drink, check out some more merch, talk to us about the podcast, all kinds of good stuff. So there's a lot of possibility there. So please mark your calendars for September 28th down in Eugene. Another bit of housekeeping is that we have a show at Sessions Music Hall, also down in Eugene, on October 25th. It's going to be our Halloween show, and I believe that is a Friday. We're also going to be performing with Toxic Zombie and Scott Watkins' band, After the Rain. So mark your calendars for that as well. So we've got the video premiere party happening September 28th, and we have the session show happening on October 25th. But in the meantime, let's get into the Keith interview. It's very, very good, and I'm very excited to share it with you. So as you can probably tell, I like to actually just start recording the moment that people come in so that I can really capture the moment. Really just capture the moment, I guess. And when Keith came in, I had this big conference table, and on the conference table, I had pulled off all the posters from inside of my office that had Thresher on them. And I put them down on the table, and I had a bunch of old cassettes and a video cassette. And so when Keith starts looking at that stuff, that's kind of how we actually started the conversation together. So if you can just imagine Keith coming in, I'm all set up, I'm all ready to record, and there's kind of a bunch of cassettes and posters and things like that just sort of sitting out. That's how we begin our conversation. So enjoy my conversation with Keith Brown. So you don't remember doing that cassette?
Well, I'm sure I'm the one that did all of the duplicating because I always did them all in my house or whatever. So,
right.
Yeah.
How many decks did you have at one time?
How many what?
How many decks did you have
at one
time?
One.
You had one?
Oh yeah.
And that was how you replicated the
That's
cassettes?
all those cassettes that we did, those little short runs, and that's why they were probably so short. Is just because I'm done. I can't duplicate. I did 50 of them or something.
How many ever you can do in an afternoon?
Yeah, kind of. So
I have a distinct memory of, I don't remember the actual address. It's been a while since I've been to Eugene.
right.
But it was like 7th or 8th in Willamette or something like that, and there was a Kinko's.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember it was so cool. Like, they wouldn't care if you just brought in coffee, use their cutting machine all the time,
Set it up.
and then you'd go to not Pro Tools but Pro Sound and Audio. And you get the blank labels,
Right.
And I remember like printing those out and then going over and spending hours just putting together
Yeah.
cassettes. It was funny that actually, so I had all this just saved throughout the years.
Okay.
This isn't kind of new. This was a trip too.
Yeah.
Remember this Fever Dream video?
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
That's one of those things you don't forget because it's such an experience, especially, when you're doing everything yourself, and it was
Right.
recorded on, 16 millimeter film and stuff like that. And
Right. That
we
was
actually
recorded on film,
made,
wasn't it?
we worked on a second video, and I don't even know where any of that is, for a song called Thetic on there. That was pretty cool, and I really don't know where it is. Like, I don't think we ever finished it. It was like half done, but with the same group of guys
Yeah.
that did that one. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. So are you originally from Grants Pass?
actually from Maryland was where I was born in DC. We moved to San Jose, California. So we lived in the Bay Area, and then that got pretty violent. Like, people were getting stabbed at my high school, and my mom's like, look,
That's
my
pretty
mom's
violent.
yeah, that is, I mean, it's like I couldn't even go to my locker in high school because it was in the bad section of the high school. Like, my high school
Wow.
had like, oh yeah, if you're in this part of the section of the high school and that's where your locker is, because it was all outside. So it was just
Right.
like, yeah, I never went to my locker. One day I finally did go there, and there was no dial on it, there was no, so I was like, well, good thing I never came here anyway. So I was
Kind of
just carried,
defeats the purpose.
yeah,
Right?
I just carried my books around. So my mom is an Oregonian, so she's like, we're going to move to Oregon, and then move to Grants Pass. And of course, that's how I met Scott.
Yeah.
In high school, which he tells the story pretty well. I was really shocked by his memory.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, his memory was never good back then, but he told a pretty good story.
Yeah, totally.
He did forget, though, because he made it sound like he started at After the Rain is where it all started. And I wasn't actually even in that band with him, but we started as kids with a band called A Reflection.
A Reflection, how was it spelled? Was it
A and then Reflection.
Okay, A
Which is
Reflection.
a Cure song, which, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah, because you both share the mutual affinity of The Cure.
Well, we kind of found them together, basically.
My God, that's awesome.
Because we were Duranis, and then of course he was a big Bowie fan and all that kind of stuff. So we'd introduce each other to stuff. And then a friend of ours, Megan Glass, said, "Oh, you got to check this out." And it was the song "Let's Go to Bed." And so I was like, "Holy crap, this is really awesome!" And then I just proceeded to go to the record store there, which is called Rare Earth. And I looked, and they said, "Okay, here's the list of stuff we have." I'm like, "Order every one of those." So I had them order everything of The Cure and so I just fed on that. And so he and I, I'm like, "Check this out." And he's like, "Holy crap." And so, but yeah, at the time we were Duranis. So we had the little blonde in the front, like John
Nice.
Taylor. And
Nice.
and
Sure.
then like he kind of tells the story when we went and saw The Cure live in '85.
Oh, that's right. That's a good story.
The Head on the Door
That's
tour.
Holy
and
cow, classic,
we
man.
immediately came home, and we called each other, and it's like, "Hey man, I'm dyeing my hair black." I'm like, "I'm dyeing my hair black too." He goes, "Okay." And we showed up to school, and his hair was brown and mine was pure black. And he's like, "Whoa, you weren't kidding." And so he then went back home and said, "Okay," and then had his mom dye his hair black. So he went for a double dye. So
Wow.
but yeah, we had the band
That's
A Reflection
crazy.
back
Cool.
then, and we actually released a 7-inch. So
No way.
there's
Wow.
a 7-inch single. That's why I was like, he didn't get in on that. And we have a lot of recordings. Like, we went to the studio quite a bit and spent quite a bit of money. And our friend Leslie, she financed our very first recording. of a song where we had no business being in a studio at $50 an hour, especially back in '85. So,
Right.
and we didn't know how to tune our instruments, nothing. Like we'd play a show and it'd be like, okay, we go to Larry's Music and they'd tune my guitar for me. And then I would be like, cool, now it's ready for the show. No idea what we were doing.
Nice. Yeah. So do you have a 7-inch A reflection?
There's got to be, I probably have one. I might have saved a few possibly somewhere. So yeah.
Wow.
I don't even know if Steve Rogers has it. So.
Oh yeah, there you go. Well, Steve Rogers just spawned that whole where he had found the 2 Minutes Hate cassette from Rich Swanson, which sort of spurred all that stuff last week.
Yeah, and that made me kind of go, what?
Yeah, it was a trip. So just to we'll get back to your story, but just to generally talk about this in the frame of generations. My daughter randomly found the Thresher T-shirt that has the scary Jack in the Box guy coming out, which there wasn't very many of those.
No,
because it was white. Everything back then was black, and everybody wore just extra large all the time.
True.
So nobody really sort of cared about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, she loves this shirt. Loves Poor Little You.
Yeah.
And Steve's done all this stuff, and so I'm kind of playing it on the sound bar and stuff like that. She's like, God, I totally recognize the song, and it was Unfair. But she picked up on it because it's freaking probably 30 beats per minute slower on the 2 Minutes Hate.
Right.
And it's not kind of as screamy with Scott,
right.
because that opens the Poor Little You record.
Mm-hmm.
And she's I was super proud of her. I'm like, oh my God, I totally didn't even catch that.
How old
either.
is she?
She is 15.
Yeah, nice.
So she's right in the kind of the punk frontal lobe,
yeah. Oh, yeah. See, we were when we
recorded
found the Cure.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
stuff, we found the Cure at that age. So it's just everything. So yes, and I want everything,
Exactly.
all of it. So yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's G-Von, we recorded Unfair with G-Von, the original writing of that song. And I think I might have been the music writer. I mean, we all kind of wrote together, but I think I might have kind of wrote that song, maybe. And that's just, G-Von was a groove player. He was way more groovy. And then when we kind of just decided that I was going to drum because drummers are just a pain in the butt. That's the only reason I became a drummer. We're just so tired of dealing with flakes and not showing up for practice and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
I'm like, look, man, let me just drum and we'll just do that. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, fine. Then so be it. But I'm tired of dealing with these guys. We just decided to do Unfair. And we're just like, let's just rock it out, because that's what that whole Poor Little You thing really was just kind of like,
oh my God, that record has never left my iPod since I've had an iPod.
That's
awesome. And that's a long time.
I can't say that.
And I still have CDs of it too.
Right.
But anyway, so okay, so you have these bands, this band in Grants Pass, and then eventually you get on the Eugene scene. Now, how did that work out? Who moved up first? And
so I lived in this, and I think, well, I won't keep reverting back to Scott's podcast, but it was a good. I was just like, wow, you guys both did a great job. I wish I could have heard more of what Rich was saying and stuff. But basically, Scott and Matt lived in San Francisco. I lived in Eugene, and I was pretty much done with music. I was just tired of it. I was just like, ugh. At one point, I got to see Jane's Addiction.
Wow.
Opened for Love and Rockets, and this was before anybody knew what they were. And I got completely baked in front of the soundboard, and we're like, me and my buddy are just kind of like, okay, cool. And then we just got so stoned, and then this band comes on, and it was just like, what in the serious is going on here? And because if you can imagine seeing Jane's Addiction, because that was before Nothing Shocking. I'm sure they probably had that first.
The live record or whatever.
Yes,
yeah,
they probably had that out, but we had no idea. So, and that kind of made me go, wow. At the very end of their set, and this is them opening for Love and Rockets, who were very established. They were on their third album. It was Earth, Sun, and Moon tour.
Yeah, okay. So they were already a big deal.
They were,
sure.
Huge. It was sold out. We remember, I think Scott was actually at that show with me. So I just remember that show was sold out, and we were from Eugene and walking through, and basically the people were all waiting for people to not go in or something and see if they could get tickets, and they're just hate you, fuck you. All these Portland people are just pissed off that we're walking through here going, oh yeah. But yeah, so it was a great show, and that Jane's Addiction, at the end of their set, they laid down all these electronic drums on the floor, and they just had strobes and just them on the floor. And they did a drum jam to end their set with strobes and these trigger pads and everything. And I was just like, no way. And then eventually I ended up seeing Hitting Birth for the first time. And that's when I was talking to Scott and Matt. I'm like, what are you guys doing music wise? I mean, I didn't know Matt, but knew Matt just a little bit from his punk days in Ashland.
Sure.
I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we're just working on some songs in the bedroom. I'm like, I saw this band called Hitting Birth, and it just kicked my ass. It gave me faith that, okay, there is something, because I don't know, it was just, everything was stagnant, I thought, in the late 80s and part of the early 90s. It's obviously pre-Nirvana and all that stuff. So seeing them for the first time was just, it just floored me. So then I'm like, yeah, we should do something. They're like, yeah, well, it's too expensive down here, so we're going to move up there. And so they moved up to Eugene, and we worked on a lot of the songs that they had already written on their 4-track. And he tells you about John Hudson, who ends up playing for Faith No More now. Yep. He moved up too for just a little bit. He just couldn't take it. He's like, I can't live here. so he left, unfortunately, because he's a very cool guy, an amazing guitarist. And he writes great riffs, and I was really bummed that he left. But so yeah, we started the band, and kind of, I guess that would be 1990 or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe 91 tops.
And this was what, 2 minutes 8?
This is 2 minutes 8. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the beginning of 2 minutes 8.
And you played guitar in 2 minutes 8.
I did.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
You eventually, when you became Thresher, you started playing the drums.
I mean, sort of, yeah. There's no distinction between 2 minutes 8 and Thresher except for a name change.
Oh, got it. Okay.
All those other things that happened just were happening all the time. So it's the same band because it's me, Scott, and Matt. And that's who started 2 minutes 8. That's who becomes Thresher. And we had to get rid of the name because there was a few different bands called 2 minutes 8. And we're getting ready to release a CD. And we're like, I don't want to run into any problems. We're, investing all this money into releasing our first CD. We need to come up with another name. And of course, not a great name, but we're pretty much guaranteed no one's going to have that name.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. And, we didn't have the internet back then to vet things or know about things. There was just this rumor of like, somebody else has the name 2 minutes 8 or whatever. I mean, Kerry Rich from Jollymon tells the story that he's like, dude, I just hate this name, dude. It's because it was the only thing they could agree on, and they already had a show booked.
Yes.
So I feel like even back then in even the late 80s, early 90s, like there was so much pressure to deliver, and everything meant everything. And I don't know if part of it was just the time, or part of it was kind of like we were in our early 20s, like just wanting to be looking good to the world, and just, everybody just wanted to be rock stars because that's what we thought happened.
Well, and it's pre-internet too, so it's like we did not have an information highway, so everything was, there's this band 2 minutes. Hey, we better look it up, and you look it up. Oh my gosh, there is one, and they're on a label, and is it a real label? I don't know, or is it a subsidiary of another label? I don't know. Couldn't find out.
Oh right, no, back then that was such a big deal.
You just had to look through these little booklets and go, okay, this and that. But this is pre-internet, so we're blindly going into a lot of these things like you're talking about. Right. So I don't think a lot of people understand that.
No, it definitely was a different time. So I was curious too. I know that there was a little bit because we were so also inbred. Back then everybody kind of played together and knew each other, and amazingly enough, at this point, by the time you guys got to Eugene, and especially by the time you guys had become Thresher, we were all kind of like established and just kind of doing, everybody's kind of doing their own thing. Do you remember that cat? Rich tried to look him up the other day, from Average Joe. Remember Average Joe and Fran and those guys? Didn't you have a place with them or live with him for a little while?
His sister and I lived together.
Oh, okay.
We were roommates. Well, first off, we knew her in the Ashland days. The punk, because there was no.
Were they from Ashland?
Yeah, Medford / Ashland. So
right.
Matt Klein and Jennifer, and so it's Jen and Joe McCarger, and that's who Average Joe was Joe McCarger.
Okay.
And so I lived with his sister for probably 10 years. When I moved to Portland, it was like the first place that I live.
Okay.
But we sort of knew them. There was no other shows to go to in Grants Pass. We either made our own shows or we went to punk rock shows. And so that's how we got to know some of those Ashland/Medford people. Was like, hey, I wasn't a punk rocker, but that was the only show I could go to. So,
Right.
saw DOA a couple times, saw Dave Grohl play with, what's his band? They opened for DRI, and DRI never actually got to play because the show got broken up. But trying to think of whatever Dave Grohl's first band was, or one of his early bands. I can't think of their name off the top of my head. But so we got to see like, those kind of bands. And it's like, I wasn't a punker, but that was the only show. So and that's how we kind of met Matt with Sick to Death and his punk rock band.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, his band was called Sick to Death. Okay.
But yeah, we know Joe and Jen and stuff. What made you think of Joe from Average Joe?
We were just kind of going through like, hey, are there any questions I should ask Keith?
Oh,
because phase 2 is going to get into like Drummatica, Rob, and that relationship. But I feel like just going back real quick, because you said you lived in Portland with this person for 10 years.
Right.
I feel like you guys beat Floater moving to Portland from Eugene.
Yeah, we did.
By a little bit.
Yeah, they were still in Eugene, and it was pretty much only a matter of time for them to move up here. If I'm telling you the Floater connection was meeting Rob for the first time and him being like a fanboy of 2 Minutes Hate and him going,
oh yeah,
hey, you guys are really cool. And we, I'm just like, whoa, who's this guy? And sure enough, it ends up being Rob, who's, Rob. and
Andy, well, speaking of going back to your original kind of high school story, Andy, who did go to high school with Rob, said that he was a Durrani.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
he also had the very frosted tips and the kind of the kind of thing going on.
That's perfect. So I met Rob. And he's like, "You got to check out my band. We're gonna play a party." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Where's this party at?" And turns out it was right around the corner in Eugene from the apartment I lived in. So I'm like, "That's gonna be easy. I'll have some drinks, smoke some weed, go hang out and watch you guys." It's in a basement party. So it was the very first time I saw Floater. And we get there and it's Pete and Rob. I'm like, "Where's your guitarist?" And they're like, "We don't know. He's supposed to be here. And this is Dave. And he just never showed up." And there's a bunch of people standing around wanting to see some music. And they kind of start playing a little bit. And he's like, "You want to play or something?" And I'm like, "Sure." And there happened to be the guitar setup. So I just would like go, okay, well, here's some songs I know, sort of, we can do them really fast and just CD, this. And so we actually jammed together. The very first time I ever saw Floater was me playing guitar for them.
I bet he was chuffed over that, man.
We entertained. That's what we did. And there was a Love and Rocket song. There was a song from Hitting Birth that I was like, I know this song, and they didn't record it, but I kind of knew it. I'm like, we can do this one real fast. We can do this, and so that was my first Floater experience, was playing in their band
that's awesome.
one show.
Yeah, there might have been some. It might have been around Halloween, and if it was, that's probably a little bit before my time. But I've heard a few stories kind of from Andy about that sort of infamous party. But it's funny you bring up Hitting Birth, because if you follow anything now, Daniel Riddle still goes out, and every year he has a different iteration of King Black Acid
right.
that goes and plays, or maybe like every 2 years or something like that.
Sure.
So he just released tickets for the Mississippi show, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that was a trip. I interviewed him for the podcast, and it was fun. He's a stud. He's from the Bay Area too, man, just like Rich. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I don't know if I'm officially a Bay Area person because I lived there, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and I wasn't in the scene. I was a kid, but I mean, technically from the Bay Area,
I lived in my car down there for a while when I worked in tech.
There you go.
But I'm with you, man. I mean, it's freaking, when you work really hard and have 2 jobs and you can barely afford your rent, like,
I bet.
Dude, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So you jammed with Floater at a party.
That was the first Floater experience. Matt actually had heard their cassette, and he's like, these guys are going to be huge. And he's the one that held on to his sync cassette or whatever that was. First.
Sure.
He held on to it forever, and I ended up selling it to Steve Rogers for him, just because this is how I met Steve Rogers.
You did? Oh God, I gotta hear that
I don't
story.
want to digress too far, but yeah. So basically, he's like, these guys are going to be huge. They're awesome. Check this out. And we had him open that show the one I think that's the Wow Hall show. And of course, that was probably the only time they opened for us, because then it was like,
yeah, they shot up pretty quick.
oh
Man.
yeah, big time.
Totally.
And they got so much airplay on KWVA. That was just like in heavy rotation, and KWVA was a big deal in Eugene.
It was a big deal. Yeah,
And
totally.
They just once they got all that radio airplay, and they just
Well,
shot.
that propelled them to get signed to Elemental, and then even John, who was by that time, they had a couple folks, Jen and Steve Woodward working the radio, and so by the time they released the second record is when Danny Boy got on, and that was at the very last death throes of actual syndicated radio with Z-Rock.
Right.
Because they sat us down when we got signed to Elemental, and they're like, do you want tour support or radio support?
Right.
We're like a bunch of kids, dude. We don't know what's going on, man. How about if I just send out my one sheets using your postal meter? Man, remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember those days.
I remember the best ones were when you'd show up to a show in like Utah, and then they go like, man, we haven't had music for 3 months. But that happened when I worked for somebody else, which is a good segue into Rich's sync cassette, the original sync that he had, where it's like got the bloody like razor blade kind of thing.
Yeah.
He gave that to
I thought we weren't supposed to.
the unmentionable one.
Yeah, I always look at it as Voldemort, but it's okay.
I know, it's like it's cool.
Even when I was listening to Carrie, he what's the name you guys all what is the name you all have? It's
John came
Crypt
up with
Keeper.
the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
That was unprompted, by the way. Keith
Yeah.
actually knew that. So this is a real thing. So you're right.
You're gonna probably have to erase that, because I do look at it that way, as like because I think we all had those experiences, and it all soured us to the music business like big time.
Yeah,
So
it did.
we got, by this said person, we got sent on what we called the Poor Tour, which was to tour sorry, I keep jumping around.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we got sent on the Poor Tour, and it's this huge here's where you're going. You're going to Idaho, you're going this and this and this. And I started advancing all the shows, and I'm calling whatever, Nero Lux or something like that, and in Idaho, and they're like, we don't know who you are. Well, we're supposed to be playing a gig there in like a week. Never heard of you. Sorry. I'm like, well, this person said this, and they're like, we've heard of her, but we have nothing. So I go, oh shit. Start calling all these other places. Nothing. It's all bullshit. She's sending us on a tour. And I don't know why. It's like, she wasn't making like money off us or anything like that. And it's not like you're going to get a percentage off of nothing. So why even send somebody on this wild goose chase? And we had to take it off work and everything. And I just go, you know what? Let's just take it as a camping trip. I've already got Denver set up because I set that up. We called this kid that we knew in Utah who did a couple Provo shows, Provo, Utah. He set it up at last minute for us. So we did like Utah, Denver, and then we did like, I think we did something in Vegas or maybe LA or something, and we just set it up last minute. But she had a long list of these shows, nothing. That was all bullshit. So
I know, yeah.
it was just like, what the hell? Oh my God, I can't believe somebody can do this. Why would you do this?
Yeah, it was pretty frustrating. I mean, and so also too, to put some context to some folks who might be slightly younger than us, there was no cell phones. There was no Google Maps. I mean, you had to kind of like look at the map. I remember, two things about that. Number one, I remember the first time we did go to Salt Lake City, or we played Salt Lake City, or let me say that again. The first time we tried to play Salt Lake City, that the north and south are according to the temple and not true north and south. So when you look on a map, it's very confusing. And eventually we met somebody at like a True Value hardware store that finally was like, oh, you guys are new. And we did the classic dumb thing where we had a bunch of like PV stickers on the back of the, advertising you're a band. Yeah. Because I don't know, it sort of gave you immunity for some things, but it also was like, hey, by the way, if you want to steal some gear, here's where it is.
Yeah.
And then number two, I remember, kind of like you, we kind of would advance things, like call people and make sure that, you have that many people and you're going out on the road. We did end up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And they said, oh man, in the last 2 weeks, the venue has changed.
Oh, yeah.
And we had rolled up, and I thought it was a joke that they said, live tonight, hot men of Australia. And I'm all, oh, look, guys, they forgot to change the sign. And the guy's like, no, it's kind of ladies' night and it's going to be a bunch of dudes. And I'm all, wow, okay, we're not playing. Let's get a hotel room.
Huh. Did you go check out the show?
No, I didn't. He wouldn't even comp it.
Or
I was too afraid to ask.
Well,
then.
Andy, you could throw Andy in there now. He's all.
Oh yeah,
he's all fit and stuff.
Totally.
So you could have, he could have been the hot guy of Australia or something. So.
Chippendale with 2 E's.
Yeah. But anyway, so that was just a mess, and that relationship that we all had, Floater had, Jollymon had, you guys had. There was a few other bands that I think got thrown into that world, like a shitstorm of, oh, I'm going to get you this, I'm going to get you that. Granted, I did get to meet Rick Parasher because of her, because Floater was recording Angels with them. So I got to meet him and stay at his house or whatever that was that they had. So they were recording bits and pieces of Angels there. So that did come true. It's just weird because you throw in these little bits of truth and then a whole shitload of lies. So just little sprinkles of truth in there, just enough to make you go, yeah, okay.
It's a trip. No, totally. That's exactly what you're talking about, because it's just believable enough where you're like, that might be a thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to now where she's like, oh, Drew Canulet. Like, I'd go look him up and see like, oh, okay, he does live in Vancouver. Okay, this kind of makes sense, kind of a thing.
Pre-internet.
So much of that.
We're blind.
Yeah. So much of that was just kind of what we wanted to be our truth.
Sure.
Back then it was just...
But why would somebody go to all that trouble to make up all that stuff? Because eventually the truth is going to come out and you're going to look like a dick. So
exactly.
Why
Totally.
do you go through all that?
Yeah.
But it's just, but
it's a trip.
Carrie mentions, I think, I can't remember if on the podcast Jonathan did or not, but
dude, you don't even have to get John drunk for that. He'll just offer that up.
Yeah.
So anyway, so even amid all of this, you're living in Portland now.
Yeah.
Well, what happens to Thresher, part A, and then B is, how does Drummatica come about?
Thresher, I believe it's more of like we just kind of, because Thresher / 2 Minutes Hate, like I said, it's really the same band. It's the same 3 core guys who've gone from whatever 1990 and whatever that last album was, Collide, that we were doing acoustic shows. We were doing anything to just try to keep our spirits, just to keep the energy, just to keep something. The acoustic shows were fun for a little bit. That was kind of a newer thing that people were doing. And with our type of music.
Right, like that was like after MTV Unplugged.
Yeah, it was right around it was all around the same time. It was like, it was just kind of this thing you could play a different club. It was a little smaller, a little more intimate.
Totally. Yeah.
And fun, because you got to revisit some songs you're just like, wow, that's cool. Oh, I can't believe we could do that with that song. So we were doing those things and just trying to keep it going. But yeah, it was just, I think it just run its course, and that's, probably 10 years or so that we were together working on stuff.
That's a long time, man.
I think it just ran its course, you know what I mean? And so that's when Scott and I were talking. Kong, who is from Grotus in San Francisco, his band, and he lived in Portland, and he was helping us with our Collide album, just like, hey, how did you guys do the loops, and how do you do keyboards, and how do you do stuff like this? And he taught us some of those things, and then we started, that just kind of morphed into TV616.
Oh my God.
I know.
I can't even believe I forgot TV616.
I know, right?
I mean, I don't remember having a record from TV616, but I very distinctly remember going to a couple shows where I was like, oh my God. I mean, it was just like all the elements of Thresher, but like just more in your face and just no stopping. And I was just like, this is freaking awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it was cool.
TV616.
We did this. So yeah, we kind of stopped doing Thresher and then kind of let that die down. But we had already had this connection with Kong from Grotus, and who we were big fans of Grotus anyway. So I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they were awesome. And Lars is the singer. He lives here in town, and he's like a huge editor of music. So like Katy Perry or somebody like that, he's always editing, doing the edits on the vocals and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay,
They send
cool.
it to him. He sends it back, and he's like a huge editor though. So so he lives here too. But we just kind of Scott and Kong and I just started working on some songs together, and I played the drums and the guitar, just for the recording purposes. And then we got it to Brian LaFelt, who's from Sweaty Nipples, and we were big fans of theirs too. Great guys. Some of our favorite shows ever,
Oh yeah, those guys put on good shows.
Good
back
shows
in the day, man.
and a good time after, some huge parties, Jonathan Bolt party where we go to Bend, it's Floater, Sweaty Nipples, and I guess we would be Thresher at the time. The show was great. The party was better. So,
right.
Lightning Bolt. Someone will get that somewhere. Yeah.
Yes,
but
they
anyway,
will.
so we gave the songs to Brian LaFelt from Sweaty, and he's like, "Oh, I love it. Let me play drums for you guys." So that's where Thresher kind of died out. TV616 started up, and I think our main purpose was, this is our last ditch effort. We're in our 30s. Let's make some cool music.
Yeah.
Let's get, Nine Inch Nails is happening, Filter, bands like that whole style of industrial-ish metal is happening. And we're kind of like, that's what we're into anyway. Skinny Puppy, all that stuff. So we just decided
I remember hearing Broken for the first time and being all like, this is the future.
Yeah.
Like because the electro stuff that we were kind of sold to in an MTV package, which eventually, I don't even know what it is now, EDM or something, it's like, that's like, it's just so club and it's just not relational.
Right.
But when Trent Reznor gets Brian Eno to produce his first record,
Yeah.
and then the Broken EP comes out, you're like, dude, this guy puts distortion on his vocals. It's like, it's like a thing, right? And so, because I remember TV616 did have like electronics and samples and loops and things like that. And did you kind of spearhead some of that?
Yeah, for me, it was a big part because when Thresher made Collide, I was still the drummer, but I wanted to be more involved in the songwriting. And so I started doing the electronic stuff. And I think Collide is kind of like, there's some stuff that's okay on there. It's not recorded very well and stuff. But it was kind of me kind of throwing in some electronics and stuff like that. And I think that kind of helped get the TV. But yeah, I did most of the electronics. And then Dave Merrick, who's from Sweaty Nipples, also helped with getting in the loops and drum loops and stuff like that. And so we all kind of worked together to make it the Poison Blanket album and stuff. And so, yeah.
Where did the name TV616 come from? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't. Maybe Scott remembers that one. Scott Part 2.
Scott Part 2.
Scott Part 2. And then you can ask him about A Reflection. No. And ask him about his hair and why did it take him so long to do his hair back then. But no, I'm really not sure where that name came from. I think it was just one of those things where you're just like, throw this, throw that, 616. You don't want to do 666. That's too, that's obvious and
That'd
goofy.
get you on Oprah or something.
Well, that might not have been bad though, because our main thing was to get it to record labels and stuff. And
so because I remember in the evolution of it, I remember watching you play drums, and you had this. It would be "Fever Dream," which was usually a pretty good opening song because of the and you had that cassette that just had the on it.
Right.
And I remember watching you with the volume pedal move. Well, you can't.
That was
see
Scott actually that did that.
Was it Scott that
Scott
did
was
that?
running it from his guitar setup.
Oh my god!
And a lot of times it'd be an on-off switch.
Oh, okay.
So that just ran, it's 45 minutes of that sound or whatever it was, or 5, 6, 7 minutes of it. And he would just turn it on and turn it off. So it was just an on-off.
I remember John Henry's like being like, how did they do that? And I must have been talking to you and you're like, oh, dude, it's a cassette. So I probably just assumed you ran it because I was talking to you about it or something. So
yeah, and we did a few things like that. It was a little too much, when you're all sweaty and, and you're a three-piece and you're dealing with that. So yeah, that was.
Yeah. I mean, you the other thing that I feel like maybe you spearheaded too was the audio-visual stuff. Because with Thresher especially, and this is, again, is a huge benefit to being a three-piece where I remember you guys came out and kind of did the butcher uniforms, and then
we would just find a bunch of 16 millimeter projectors and films and they would, oh, cool, this one's cool. And, we'd go to schools that were, in their basement or something like that of a school. And it's like, hey, do you guys want these? And they're like, no, we'll take them. It was cool. Safety film
like
for
the
16 millimeter.
films.
It's hard to find that stuff back then. So it was all 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter projections. And also Root from Onomatopoeia was doing.
Oh wow!
He was doing that kind of stuff as well, and he would kind of help out too. But it mainly morphed into dim bulb projections, which was Scott and Laura, and then eventually with Thresher, when we started playing to a click track, we could sync that all together. So I had a click going through, and we could have the video in the back, and then we didn't have anybody have to run projectors. It was all video projector by then.
Nice.
So
okay, yeah, that's cool. I mean, that definitely was a lot for Eugene. That was like, holy shit, these guys are really doing it.
We just
now.
wanted to do it all. We wanted everything, and
that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, just like all the senses.
So I'm gonna go back. I know we're skipping around quite a bit. So after TV616,
okay,
how does Drummatica come into being?
Drummatica started while TV616 was going on, so it wasn't really, because it was more of a side project. I mean, I don't know if you guys...
when you get in your 30s, you like realize like, hey, I don't have to do one thing. I can kind of do other things or play different roles in different bands.
And to be honest, I don't know if you experienced it in Eugene or not, but we did, where it was like I was 24, 25, and all I wanted to do was music. And I was in a band called Intercedalis. I was in my own band called Sentence to Life. I was in a band called Horse. Sometimes Pete and Rob from Floater were in that band. And, it was like, I sometimes I had 3 or 4 different rehearsals within a week of different bands. So I've always been into, hey, let's do this. Hey, well, I can play guitar in that. Well, let's play drums in this one. And it kind of all started with that for us. It's like, how many bands can you be in?
Passion in your early 20s and not having to kill somebody's nephew just to get a show.
Yeah.
Because music, we were so blessed in Eugene, and we didn't even know it at the time. That was like 3 or 4 venues would have live music 7 nights a week. So, and you would that's just what you would do. You'd go out and see other people's bands.
Right. And I worked at John Henry's. I worked the door there. And so it'd be like, hey, we need someone to fill this spot. Can you pick one of your bands to go play? Can you open the show? It's like, okay, cool. And, we would open for somebody really cool or something. Be like, oh, Typo Negative. It's like, wow. Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, let's open that show or whatever. So with TV616, so Brian LaFelt, who's from Sweaty and also played drums in TV616. I was talking to him about this idea I had, and it was because I was at Pioneer Square and I worked in this building really high up, and they had this drum jam that was over so they had this electronic thing going on, and then it was just a drum circle with electronics, and it just sounded so cool. And I'm up there and reverb and everything, and just like, yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So we started, being stand-up drummers, playing with electronics. And then that was us at Dante's every Sunday night. We were at Sinferno, and we were a part of the Sinferno Sunday show. So Frank from Dante's had us there every Sunday. Brian and I would play 10 minutes. Then the girls would come on and do some stuff. Then some of the girls are like, hey, is it all right if I come on stage and dance while you're playing? Absolutely. So that's how Drummatica started.
That's when you've arrived. When chicks ask to come on stage to come and dance.
Yeah, they're like, oh, send me a song so I can, be ready for your song when it comes on or whatever. And I'm, of course. And what's your phone number? And yeah,
there you go.
Whatever. So we would do this Inferno Sundays, and then it's like, hey, Rob, there's this song we've got, and it really could use some vocals. And then he started to kind of come up and did a song, and then Jen Folker, who was with Dahlia and Eugene, and I knew her back.
She was on the
Eugene.
record too, huh?
Yeah. So she's the female on the Drummatica records, and Rob's the male, and I knew her in Eugene when she was a kid, like she was 21 years old, and we were hanging out and stuff when just starting. So I'd known her a long time. So, she'd do a song, and then it'd be a lot of instrumentals. And then it kind of morphed into, well, let's make an album. And then, hey, let's have you two sing together. Oh my God, you guys sound great together, of course, because you're both brilliant vocalists,
Yeah, totally.
Of course you sound good. And so that's kind of how it all started. It was just more of like Sinferno Sunday and just having a residency there. And then it just kind of like, hey, here's a song here, a song there. We got an album. Let's put an album together. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Cool. And so what are you up to these days?
Not as much music as I would like, but I'm getting back, and I don't know if it's a Drummatica album or what it is, but Scott. So this podcast is good because all these people we're talking of. So
it's a way to throw your hat over the fence right now, right?
This is just, well, no. This is actually all happening. These people that I've been talking about. What I did was I wrote a bunch of songs, and I'm like, I would love to get every person I've ever really come in contact with and say, hey, can you do a song? Hey, can you, the singer from Blister, I sent him a Blister 66. I don't know if you remember them. They'd come
I
here.
remember Blister.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We
Great.
played Mile High Saloon with them when we would hit Denver.
Absolutely. Wonderful people, wonderful, talented people. And so I sent Chris Dillinger a song, and I sent one to Jason Fell from Gash Dig, and I sent some to Rob, and I sent one to Lars from Grotus, and I just said, here are some of my favorite vocalists or people I've been friends with forever. Sure enough, nothing back. And hey, I like it. I'm going to do something. Okay. Nothing. Rob, I'm like, hey. And he's like, so I got some Rob songs. Jen, she's back in town now. Jen Folker from the Dahlia days. And I got some songs with her. And I'm like, cool. And she's working on those. Scott came up and he recorded some songs. So my tried and true, the people who've always kind of been there as far as with, these other people are wonderful people and everything. It's just timeline didn't work out for them or whatever.
Sure.
But so I've got songs with Scott and Jen and Rob. So I don't know what it's going to be. It might be a Drummatica album. I don't know yet. But
so Drummatica did 2 records, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Well, first off, congratulations. That's awesome. That's great to just kind of hold it together, still be writing songs, still being expressive. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
And here's the weird thing that I think maybe, and again, I don't know if a lot of people can relate to this, but it just kind of never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It never, and it's kind of hard to describe. It's not a color. It's not a feeling. It's just a thing that is like, nobody cares about being a rock star anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really care about our legacy or our legend. It just lives inside of you, and it just kind of comes out.
Right.
I mean, we did a new record. We got the irony with Henry's Child is we actually have been reunited longer than we were originally together in the first place.
Is that right?
2014 is when we reunited.
Okay.
And it's 2019
right
now. So we were actually from 1993 to 1998 was the original sort of Henry's Child.
Okay.
Back from when, Andy and Rob and Pete had their band.
Sure.
All the way through sort of when Andrew left and he came back and we sort of redid it. Now, Rich and I, we never stopped playing. We did all kinds of different bands and stuff in between. But so I guess maybe my final question is, have you considered any sort of curation of your back catalog? Making it available online, or
I think it's on or some of it's on iTunes, I believe. I've never, I think the Drummatica albums are on there. TV616 is on there. As far as these cassettes, these off cassettes things, I don't have most of those. Once again, the Steve Rogers factor. He'll find them if they can be found.
Your Steve Rogers story, man.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a Steve Rogers story. I mean, I think
you say you sold him Sync for Matt, or something.
That's the first time I'd ever met him that that I know for sure. And that was basically we were just kind of going back and forth on something. I'm like, hey, I've got this original Sync, and my buddy wants to sell it. And I go, what's a good price? And he goes, I can't remember what price he came up with, but we met at Lloyd Mall, and I think his kid was with him too. And so we were just kind of chatting, but then we just have these messages, if I was to pick out my phone and go, here's our long list of messages back and forth, and him going, what did you guys do this? Where's this? What's that? And then probably he might listen to this podcast and go, wait a minute. So there's an A reflection, because he's such
Steve's good for that.
He's such a collector.
He's a collector.
I highly doubt there's any way he can find it unless I have it in my garage, and that's the things. He's just such a good collector of things. And it's like some of the things I only have, and I'm just like, here, you take this because you really enjoy this, being a collector and everything. And it's just sitting in my garage, and you're going to do something with it. You'll be chronicled somewhere, which is kind of what you want. And so, yeah, he just brings things in, what? I go, I don't remember that. And he'll go, oh, is this, this, and this? And it was probably between this timeline and this. And you're probably right.
Yeah. Steve's a stud, man, for sure.
Yeah. So, as far as I don't know if everything that we've ever done is online. I don't think the reflection stuff I would consider it embarrassing, but I don't think it is. It's fun. We're kids. We're 16 years old making music, going into a frickin' studio. Who's doing that? We're in Grants Pass and we make our own shows. And so I can't be embarrassed of that.
Oh, not at all, man.
But still, I don't think any of that's really out there. Which it could be. I've given some CDs to friends and stuff. It's like, hey, here's all these songs we did. Because there's a lot. There's a lot. I was like, wow.
Yeah, there's Thresher and TV616 fits a bill that just kind of resides in my head, where I'll be doing something like I'll take the kids up to Seattle and doing something, and my 15-year-old, she loves going to the actual record stores and record shops and all that stuff. And if any of those pop up, or Henry's Child, of course,
sure.
I just immediately buy them.
Yeah.
I think I've found like 3 Thresher, Poor Little You CDs, which I always keep for curation purposes. Because there's us playing with Culprit up at the Sub-Zero, which used to be the off-ramp for anybody that watched those Singles movies. That was the club. And we played there, Henry's Child, Thresher there. And then, of course, this was one of our very first Well Hall shows, was that very last flyer there with you guys and Village Idiot. Mm-hmm. So Village Idiot in the middle and us opening.
Right.
July 1st? Is that?
Yeah, July 1st.
Glasses
and
on. Had to have been 95.
Yeah, that's probably right around there. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy John's. You guys own Tommy John's. I mean, you guys were...
It's an Allen Brothers now.
What is it?
It's an Allen Brothers
coffee.
Really? Yeah.
Well, it kind of should have been. I mean, that's not really... That wasn't much of a venue.
It wasn't really a club.
It
was kind of like beating up your 2-year-old brother. A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you guys made it a club, with your appearances and stuff. And Floater, I think, made some there. And probably Jolly Mom probably played there, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I don't know. As far as everything, the catalog, I mean, maybe someday I should just kind of make sure, because I know a lot of it's out there, and some of the Threshers out there. And
you should curate it, man. You should put it up on some webpage somewhere, and hosting's so cheap these days, man. Just leave it out there, because you're going to have 15-year-olds that find you and then be like, oh my God.
Awesome. Your 15-year-old sounds pretty special, man. I don't know.
Pretty rad, yeah.
I don't know. There's like 15-year-olds like that out there that are just so wise beyond their years and really wanting to dig into music when we spent the time that we did. Once again, there was bad things to the internet, but there's also good things, because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet, and you went and you practiced in your room, and you were there for 3 or 4 hours. Yep. You take some breaks to go to the store and grab some old English 40s or whatever, and you would go play some more, and you would record it on cassette to remember it, and then you would do it again 2 days later. And because you had nothing else really going on, there was no distractions.
There was no choice but to be present.
Yes.
And do what you were going to do, man.
And I think it reflects in the music. I mean, I think you can almost hear it in some of the newer music that's out today. Some of it's just not really focused, and we all spent our time, maybe we weren't all the greatest musicians or whatever, but it wasn't from lack of trying. We spent our time. We sweat our butts off in the Bill's Electric sheds or whatever that we needed to do. I mean, Floater was out there. You guys had been out there. Is that
West
right?
11th. Yeah.
So we were out there, and we had one of those nice sheds. We weren't in the rows. There was the 2.
Shit.
We had 2 that
you had the premium ones.
We had the primo ones because we were early. We were one of the early ones that talked him into, doing that. And we parked our van. Our tour van was parked right next to that. And we go, anytime we go, we just load everything into the van and head out. But yeah, I think there's something to be said that if your youngster is finding this and there's something deeper there. And
Yeah.
when we all made that music, people should go back to that time and check out some of that 80s and early 90s and Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains. When those guys were making music, they spent a lot of soggy days and soggy nights working on music and being in this environment that the Northwest is and stuff. It's kind of like England. It's almost like the same type of weather. So
Right.
some of my favorite music is British. Some of my favorite music is Northwest. And you're looking at the same type of weather system and same type of weather pattern. You have no choice but to go inside, make some kick-ass music, and see what comes out. So
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming down, Keith. I appreciate it, man.
thanks for having me. Good to see you
Good
again.
talk, my friend.
Yeah.
So there you have it. My conversation with Keith Brown. And as you can tell, we are definitely brothers from another mother, if you know what I'm saying. No, it went off really great, and I was super, super excited to have talked to Keith. And even before he left, he had recommended 5 people that he thought would be really, really great for this podcast. So, we're going to keep doing it. As long as people keep downloading it and people keep coming to shows, we will keep producing stuff. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate your participation and your enthusiasm and, working with us and hanging with me right until the end. So at this point, if you're not subscribed to the Am I Crazy or Am I Just Raving podcast, you really should consider subscribing. It's one click, whether you're on Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Podcasts. They actually call it Apple Podcasts now instead of iTunes. All 3 of those are a one-click subscription, so please subscribe to this podcast if you do not subscribe already. If you're a fan and really want us to hang around, go to those respective places and leave a 5-star rating and review. That's always very helpful. And finally, if you're not on our email newsletter list, you really should be, because that's where kind of the real early stuff comes out, and there's free songs on there, and there's just a bunch of stuff that's very cool and definitely for fans of Henry's Child. And you can sign up for the newsletter list at our website, henryschild.com. And up on top, if you click on the link that says free music, that will take you down to the link where you can sign up to be on the newsletter list. And trust me, I work in IT, and I work with the Canned Spam Act of 2003, which is now freaking like 16 years old. And I do not sell or trade your information. It is safe with me. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you at the video premiere party September 28th down in Eugene. Talk to you soon.